Hello Fanatics, welcome or welcome back to Diamond Paintings and Fanatics. I am Cindy and it is true crime story time. With a difference, but I'll get there in a minute. First of all, I am working on this project. It is another Buddha for my mum. It's going in her dining room. It is 80 by 110 in square. So you're probably going to see a lot of this before it's done here on my channel. Now, I thought I would try something a little bit different. I'm going to do a mini series within my series, and it's called True Crime and Fairytale Time, because this is going to be a little bit different. Now, if you absolutely love Disney and you buy into that whole princess lifestyle, finding your one true love who is perfect and idyllic and is everything you could ever wish for, this is not the series for you. I'm going to begin by telling the story, and you might well be aware of the whole story already, having grown up watching all the Disney movies and all the happy endings. Yeah. What I'm going to do is tell you the story, and then I'm going to come back to parts of that story and reveal things that should or could be mind-blowing and will fit into my true crime part of the series. So yeah, you can listen to the first half if you like, just the ideal little story, and then you can tune out if you don't want or are not curious about where the true crimes occurred. So let's begin. Today's episode is based on Ariel, aka the Little Mermaid. What a lovely story. Ariel is the 7th born daughter of King Triton and Queen Athena of an underwater kingdom called Atlantica. Her 7 sisters are Athena, Alana, Adela, Equator, Arista and Adrena. Ariel is a young mermaid and living happily with her father, King Triton, and her mother, Queen Athena, along with her 6 older sisters. As Ariel and her family are relaxing lagoon, a pirate ship approaches and everyone flees except the Queen, who returns to recover a music box that King Triton had given her as a gift. Very valuable gift. She went back to go get it. Personally, I would have left it behind. My life is more important. But Queen Athena subsequently dies when the ship crushes her. Devastated, absolutely heartbroken, devastated, King Triton bans all music from Atlantica and throws the music box deep into the ocean. Ariel and her sisters grow up forgetting music and living under their father turns very, very strict and has very little to do with the upbringing of the 7 daughters, and Marina Del Rey becomes their nanny or governess. Ariel meets Flounder and follows him to a secret underground club where Sebastian and his band play music. There she sings the song I Remember.
What's that feeling? I remember.
which reminds her of her distant past surrounded by love and music and, of course, of her mum. Ariel then introduces her sisters to the club, but eventually they're caught thanks to the nanny, who had followed them. Sebastian and his band are imprisoned and the club is closed under King Triton's orders. After arguing with Triton, or Dad in this case, Ariel breaks the band out of prison and escapes with them. With Sebastian's assistance, Ariel finds her mother's music box and they decide to return it to Dad. On the way back to Atlantica, they encounter the nanny, and a struggle ensues in which Ariel is knocked unconscious, which is witnessed by Triton. Ariel makes a full recovery and a very remorseful Triton allows music back into Atlantica. Now Ariel is adventurous and curious about not only her surroundings, that she often wanders off on her own, but also about the world of humans, which is a big no-no with King Triton. You're not allowed to go to the surface and you're not allowed to interact with humans. It's a big no-no. So, Dad often gets annoyed with both Ariel for wandering off all the time and Sebastian, who is supposed to be keeping a very close eye on her due to King Triton's orders. Sebastian is the right-hand man to the king, so he should be able to keep them all in line, but he struggles due to her willful, playful character. Flounder, her best friend, and Ariel go in search of human objects, and they often take a seagull named Scuttle. Now, moving forward, we're disobeying Dad all the time, and Ariel falls in love with a human prince who is Eric, and she saves him from drowning. And she then visits a sea witch, which is Ursula, and Ursula agrees to turn her into a human in exchange for her voice. Now, there's a deal made between Ursula and Ariel, and that is that she will become human and she must make Prince Eric fall in love with her and romantically kiss her within 3 days, or she belongs to Ursula forever. After being transformed, Ariel found that she can no longer breathe or swim. Sebastian and Flounder take her to the surface, and she is soon found by Eric. Eric takes her back to his castle, and she almost manages to obtain the kiss of true love, but is stopped by Ursula's underhand tactics. Now, Ursula will not make a deal that she does not think that she is going to win, if you like. So tactics are now in place, and on the second day, Ursula transforms herself into a beautiful human, calling herself Vanessa, and using Ariel's voice bewitches Eric to make him marry her on the 3rd day. After learning from Scuttle that the woman is actually Ursula, In disguise, Ariel disrupts the wedding and regains her voice, but the sun sets as Ariel and Prince Eric are about to kiss, transforming Ariel back into a mermaid. After transforming herself back into her true witch form, Ursula takes Ariel back into the ocean, where she is met by King Triton and Sebastian. Ariel now belongs to Ursula because she won her deal. She didn't get love's true kiss. She didn't make Eric fall in love with her. So, yeah, that's where that stands. So, Triton trades himself for Ariel, enabling Ursula to steal his crown and enabling her to claim his trident, which angers Ariel, who will not allow Ursula to destroy the Atlantica kingdom or humans. In the battle that follows, Ariel is trapped at the bottom of a whirlpool before Ursula can kill her. Eric impales Ursula with a derelict ship's splintered prow. After Ursula dies, her spell is broken. King Triton and all of the mermaids are transformed back into normal merpeople. At the end of the film, King Triton uses his magical trident to transform Ariel into a human. She leaves the sea to live in the human world. She and Eric get married. They live happily ever after, and she is actually the only princess, as far as I know, to actually become a mum. She does give birth to a daughter and so names her Melody. Ariel is now the queen of Eric's kingdom and has given birth to a daughter, Melody. When Melody's safety is threatened by Ursula's sister, Morgana, after using her as hostage to get to Triton's trident. Say that 10 times fast. Ariel and her husband Eric decide they must keep Melody away from the sea, so they build a large wall to separate it from the castle. But Melody's love of the sea proves too strong, and she visits Morgana, who turns Melody into a mermaid temporarily. Side note here, she's got her mother's strong will, hasn't she? Okay, King Triton uses his trident to transform Ariel back into her own mermaid form to find and rescue Melody. Morgana tricks Melody into taking part in a plot to steal her grandfather, King Triton's trident. Together with Tip the Penguin and Dash the Walrus, she goes to Atlantica and succeeds in acquiring the trident. Ariel arrives as they return it back to Morgana and tries to persuade Melody to give the trident back. Morgana then reveals her true intentions. She calmly mentions that the spell that turned Melody into a mermaid will wear off by sundown, then uses the trident's magic to lord over the ocean, rising to the surface to gloat. Scuttle, Triton and Sebastian, along with Eric, arrive and a battle ensues against Morgana and her minions. Her minions are Cloak and Dagger. Soon after sunset, Morgana's spell wears off and Melody returns to human form. Ariel saves Eric from Cloak and Dagger, who pulled him into the depths, and Melody manages to grab the trident and return it to King Triton, who then punishes Morgana by sending her to the bottom of the ocean in a frozen block of ice. Triton returns Ariel to human form. The wall separating Eric's castle from the sea is torn down, and the contact between humans and mermaids is restored. What a lovely story! We have family battles, we have peace between humans and mermaids. What a lovely story. Now I'm going to make a fresh cup of tea. I'll be back within the blink of an eye, and I will now tell you the true crime version. Get ready. Let's begin with King Triton. Okay, the backstory behind that is him and his wife, Queen Athena, were childhood sweethearts, and they got married. They had 7 daughters, very, very much in love, and she dies. And he's heartbroken, devastated, doesn't know how to cope with that. So then he turned into this mega strict parent who, from the true crime side, or my side, becomes narcissistic. Okay, now, well, let's talk about narcissism. Narcissistic personality disorder is a complex mental health condition that typically involves a grandiose or inflated sense of self and an extreme need for admiration and attention, along with other symptoms. But he's already a king. He already has that grandiose, inflated sense of self, and is already getting the admiration and attention. The king. So, people with narcissistic personality disorder or narcissistic tendencies sometimes show a pattern of manipulative, controlling behaviour that involves both verbal abuse and emotional manipulation. So, when his wife died and he turned into the very strict parent, he became manipulative and controlling, because no matter what the kids did wrong in his eyes, they were banished. They were locked in a room in the castle. They were not allowed to leave the castle, and so on and so forth. So, personally speaking, I think he's a tad narcissistic. Also, common types of narcissistic manipulation is triangulation. Someone who uses this tactic will try to pull a third person into your conflict, typically to reinforce their own opinion or position. Sebastian is the third person, so it's 2 against 1, basically. What else? Gaslighting is typically one. Gaslighting is when someone is trying to get you to doubt your own perspective and reality, often twisting facts or insisting things that you remember didn't actually happen. We also have hoovering. This tactic involves attempts to reconnect or pull you back into a toxic or abusive relationship. Now, she kept trying to wander off. I'm not saying move out necessarily, but she did keep wandering off and testing his boundaries. Silent treatment. This behaviour becomes manipulative when someone purposefully ignores you to control you or make you feel isolated. Now, that often happened in this story between the dad and the daughters because he had very little to do with their upbringing, brought in the nanny stroke governess to do the bulk of the upbringing, and then he would spend a certain amount of time with each child going for a walk, but they were not allowed to talk, they were not allowed to communicate, and so on and so forth. And then when Ariel said, I want to do something different, this is getting a bit tedious, he lost his temper, which again will come into that later. Passive aggression, indirect blame shifting, sabotage and sarcasm can all point to covert narcissistic manipulation. Now, these tactics will be used to confuse you, make you question your sense of reality and damage your self-esteem, which definitely happened to Ariel. The effects of narcissistic behaviour is you feel isolated, and Ariel very much was. And when you're isolated or you feel isolated, that makes you more prone, if that's the right word, to further narcissistic manipulation. The person abusing you may pull you back in with kindness or even apologise or pretend the abuse never happened in the first place. Also, when you get a third person, Sebastian, coming in and saying, look, no, keep away from the surface, keep away from humans, they're reinforcing dad's rules. Another effect of narcissistic abuse is that you feel restless and unsettled. Narcissistic abuse can sometimes be unpredictable. You may not know whether they're going to criticise you or surprise you with a gift or kindness. If you don't know what someone will do or say at any given moment, you might develop a lot of tension from needing to regularly prepare yourself to face conflict. Worries about the constant stream of criticism or how best to handle the abusive behaviours, you're beginning to recognise you can also leave you constantly on edge. You may not know how to relax anymore, since you don't know whether you're going to be... You just don't let your guard down on a constant level, and when you're living in that, you become hyper vigilant. But I'm not here to talk about all the traits and everything else. Linking it to Ariel out and her abuse cycle. So dad was often short-tempered, very prone to anger, so she was constantly on edge about what she's done wrong this time and all of that. And again, she did constantly push his buttons by wandering off and going up to the surface and collecting all the human artefacts and everything else. Another symptom is that you don't recognise yourself. When facing abuse, many people eventually adjust their self-identity to accommodate an abusive partner. Of course, Ariel loves her dad. It's her dad, and you're constantly reinforcing. You're doing things to upset your dad. Your dad loses his temper. I'm speaking for Ariel here, but dad constantly loses his temper and you're prone to outbursts of anger and everything else. Then you lose a sense of self, which makes you feel lost and empty, and you have a hard time enjoying life and lose sight of your sense of purpose. Another effect of narcissistic abuse is that you have trouble setting boundaries. This can both be personal and in future relationships. Now, to tie all this in, because I'm doing all of the effects and abuse, but feeling isolated. Okay, she was very much alone, and you have to remember she was very, very young when her mum died, and she's grown up with this version of her dad, but she does have some memory of happier times with her mum and the music and the happiness, and they were a happy, loving family in the beginning. So yeah, now she's gone from that to feeling isolated. Then the fight or flight, escaping the situation. She is daydreaming about humans and the human world, and again tying into the restlessness and unsettled vibe that she must have from the abuse. You lose your sense of self, you lose your self-esteem, and therefore she is constantly dreaming of a different world and trying to escape this very narcissistic, toxic relationship. Now, all of her sisters are quite quiet in the background, so I'm assuming that they all fall in line. They don't go wandering off, but because she's the youngest and the most vicarious, I guess, this is Ariel's story. So just for the sake of the story, I'm going to say that the 6 sisters have just towed the line for pander to dad and don't upset the apple cart in any way, and are quite happy with their life as a whole. So that's what I'm going to just say about that. Now, not recognising yourself, losing your sense of self, feeling lost and empty. Now, she's lost and empty within herself, and she fills that void by collecting all the human artifacts, and knowing that dad doesn't like it, she's found a secret grotto where she's kept them all. Now, dad finds this grotto at some point and absolutely demolishes it, regardless to her feelings. She's crying, she's upset, she's begging him to stop, and he's just smashing the place up. That's abuse. That is abuse. And again, what is that setting in Ariel? Now, when I talked about the setting boundaries, that comes later on with Eric. She finds Eric, falls in love with Eric very, very quickly, and then imagines this whole life, falls in love with him, and imagines this whole life with a human. And again, it's escaping who you are to become someone else, and that is typical of abuse victims. Now I want to touch on something that is what I think Ariel has. That would be obsessive compulsive disorder, otherwise known as OCD. Now, that is a chronic mental health condition that involves obsessions or compulsions or both. People living with OCD typically experience obsessions or repetitive unwanted thoughts that prompt an extreme urge to repeat a specific behaviour. Then they act out that urge or compulsion to relieve the obsessive thought. Now, she's obsessed and compulsed to collect all of these human artifacts at the bottom of the ocean. She's obsessed and compulsed to interact with humans or watching them and everything else. Now, I know typically OCD is like typically Sheldon from Big Bang, you know, where he goes knock 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 penny, knock 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 penny, knock 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 penny. That's OCD. And it can be washing your hands, checking the doors are locked, turning off all the switches. It can be very atypical. I am linking mine to Ariel. Now let's go with obsessions for a second, okay? You can be worried about germs, dirt, illness, fears of harming yourself or someone else, fears of saying something offensive or obscene, a need to have your possessions aligned, orderly and symmetrical, worries about throwing things away, Ariel, questioning your health and or your safety to yourself or your loved ones, and again anything intrusive, images, words or sounds. It is all typical of OCD obsessions. Now they keep coming back. No matter how hard you try to ignore them or suppress them, their very persistence can lead to an even stronger conviction that they might come true or that they are true if you don't take steps to prevent them. Now compulsions: washing your hands, objects, body, organising or aligning objects in a specific way, counting or repeating specific phrases, touching something a set number of times, seeking assurance from others, collecting certain objects, or buying several of the same item. Collecting certain objects fits Ariel. Hiding objects that you could use to hurt yourself or someone else. Well, not hurting someone, but she was certainly hiding her objects. Mentally going over your actions to make sure you haven't harmed anyone else. Compulsions are typically a response to the obsessions. Once an obsession surfaces, you might feel compelled to take action in order to relieve the anxiety and distress it causes, or to keep that obsessive thought from coming true. You might feel the need to repeat these actions a specific number of times, or until things seem right. If you make a mistake during the ritual, you might feel that it won't work unless you start from the very beginning and finish it perfectly. So what causes OCD? Experts don't know exactly what causes OCD, but a family history of the condition might play a part. If you have a close family member with OCD, or you have a higher chance of also having OCD. Irregular development and impairment in certain areas of the brain have also been linked to the condition. Also, you're likely to develop OCD through stress or trauma. Significant stress at home, school or work, in personal relationships can raise your chances of developing OCD or worsening existing symptoms. Personality: it is certainly a personality trait. Abuse in childhood: children who experience abuse or other traumatic childhood experiences like bullying or severe neglect also have a higher chance of developing the condition. Now again, Ariel was very neglected by her dad, and was just kind of palmed off onto the governess or the nanny. I think part of her personality was to be curious, so that also plays into it. But again, stress or trauma. She lost her mum at a very young age. Her dad became a narcissist, in my opinion. Again, all significant traits of OCD. Therefore, I conclude Ariel was a victim of narcissistic abuse, along with OCD. I am no medical professional by any means. However, I do consider myself a bit of a diamond painter detective, but I know, I make myself laugh. I'm going to diagnose Ariel with another condition, and that is borderline personality disorder, made famous by Amber Heard herself. That's where I learnt a lot of that from. So what is it? A borderline personality disorder is a type of personality disorder, and you might be diagnosed with a personality disorder if you have difficulties with how you think and feel about yourself and other people, and are having problems in your life as a result. Now, I'm just going to pick a few of these because I want to kind of round this up at some point. You have very intense emotions that last from a few hours to a few days and can change quickly. No. You don't have a strong sense of who you are, Ariel. And it can change significantly depending on who you're with. You act impulsively and do things which could be considered dangerous. Ariel. Now, she's been told not to go to the surface, keep away from humans. It's all unknown to the mermaids at the bottom of the ocean, but she keeps going up there. Now, not having a strong sense of who you are, and it can change significantly depending on who you're with. Now, she doesn't know who she is. She hasn't had the chance to grow up and develop her sense of self, and her dad's constantly on her case and constantly banishing her to the rooms, so she has no sense of self. So she falls in love with Eric very quickly, which is another symptom, and that's it. She's decided that's who she wants to be with, and then she becomes human and goes and lives her human life with Eric, and they seem to live happily ever after, having a daughter, and that's all fabulous. But now she's basing her personality on Eric. And I'm not saying love at first sight doesn't exist. I'm not saying that you don't lock eyes with someone across the room and go, that's going to be my future husband. That I believe in all of that. But this is true crime, story time. Yeah, I just think there's a whole dynamic within the tale of the Little Mermaid, and again it came to light that Ursula and Morgana, who are sisters, were the sisters of King Triton, and he banished them. Now, it's been said, I'm not sure how accurate this is, but it has been said that Mum and Dad of the three children, Triton, Ursula and Morgana, they were to equally run Atlantica. But Morgana and Ursula were going down a deep dark path that was not good with Triton, so he banished them to wherever in the ocean. He banished them, got rid of them, sent them out of Atlantica, and then they spent the rest of their time plotting against their brother. Now, it's been said that Ursula summoned the pirate ship that killed his wife, and the wife was the only one who was ever friendly towards Ursula. But means to an end, right? To harm their brother, they killed his wife. Speculation. And yeah, that's why they were always plotting against him. And then when she gets the Triton and sees his power, goodness always wins over evil. Long story short, in Fairytale land. But yeah, Triton got rid of Ursula, got rid of Morgana in a criminal way. I think Eric was actually the one that killed Ursula, if I remember correctly, going back earlier. So Eric is a murderer. There is your true crime, along with all the narcissistic abuse that has been going on. But there was actually a true crime within The Little Mermaid. So, what do you think? Have I overthought The Little Mermaid way too far with a very cynical brain? Or am I on point? Have I completely ruined Little Mermaid? Let me know in the comments. As always, let me know your thoughts. Have I missed out something that you now see? Very curious. I have no idea how this mini series within my series is going to go down, but I do hope you enjoyed it. So please do let me know. Have a chat with me in the comments, and I shall see you very, very soon for another true crime fairy tale time. Which Disney princess shall we cover next?